All right, what up, AP Psych? We're back with our next video in our development unit. This one is all about adolescent development, so super relatable to the stage in life that you all are at. We'll talk about a few concepts, another theory to add to our list of theories in this unit, and then we'll wrap everything up next class. So getting started, we're going to start with our social clock. This is a concept that we're all familiar with, but the social clock is that cultural timeline that sets expected ages for key life events like starting a career, getting married, having children, shaping social expectations for individuals. And that social clock kind of really starts in adolescence, right? Especially as you get towards middle and late adolescence, you have a lot more of those social expectations around when things are supposed to happen for you as you grow and age. So when you think about some of those things on the social clock, right, maybe pause right here and think about when these things maybe happen. When might be the typical time frame for these things to happen? Moving out of your parental home, starting your career, getting married, having a child, retiring for full-time work, becoming a grandparent. While they might be different for individual people, on the whole, on average, we would probably be pretty close in our expectations of when these might happen. So those things can be influenced by our culture, gender, socioeconomic status, even our geography, different types of the world or of our country, kind of like our culture, go through things differently or have different expectations. Some other factors, what could be some other factors involved in an individual's timeline for achieving these milestones, right? Like career success, things like that might impact how they're moving through their social clock. Different biological issues that some people may experience that others don't, things like that. And how does pressure from the social clock impact mental and emotional well-being? This is a big one on the mental side of things. If you don't think that you are moving through life typically like someone is supposed to, whatever that might mean, that might experience some anxiety or mental or emotional anguish as a result of not keeping up with the expectations of the social clock. When we talk about adolescent development, there's actually been a new stage or a newer stage of adolescent development that has been proposed recently, and that's emerging adulthood. So this is a new stage, particularly in developed countries, where this is a transitional life stage from late teens to mid-20s, marked by exploration and self-discovery as individuals navigate career paths, relationships, and personal identity. So this you can think of as like your college years, trying to find yourself and find your career into those first couple years of your career life, right? So that example being a recent high school graduate enters college and finds themselves in a period of exploration. They're juggling coursework, internships, social activities, all of these different things, right? It's characterized as emerging adulthood because you have this newfound independence, but there's also some uncertainty and self-discovery that's taking place. So although you are biologically and lawfully an adult, there's still a lot of emotional, mental, and social growing up to do. And that's where emerging adulthood comes from. That would be the end of the adolescent period. But let's go back, right? So during the adolescent period, there's something that adolescents go through called egocentrism. It's very different from but not really, I guess, a different age range, but similar idea to Piaget's egocentrism, right? But this is the adolescent version. And in adolescent egocentrism, it's essentially where you just think you're the main character, right? You've marked by an increased self-focus, where you have beliefs that your experiences are unique and that others are always observing them. So there's going to be two parts to this egocentrism called imaginary audience and personal fable, right? But you all know what this feeling is like because you're all in this stage right now, right? You think that everyone is always watching you. You are the center of attention. You feel like everything is going to be scrutinized, your outfits, your hairstyles, your personal choices. And while those things are being observed, they're not being observed to the level that maybe you perceive them to be. Because guess what? Everybody else in your age range is doing the same thing. They have that egocentrism. They're only really focusing on themselves. So nobody's paying attention to you as much as you think they are. But this is a hallmark of adolescent development, that egocentrism. So let's break down the next two parts. You have imaginary audience, right? Where in adolescence, you believe that others are constantly watching and judging you, their behavior, makes you highly self-conscious, right? It might impact your self-esteem, might impact the choices you make and the behaviors you engage in and the people you talk to, because you think people are always watching you and judging you, right? So here's an example. Teenager spends a lot of time perfecting their outfit and hairstyle before school. I'm sure some of you do that, right? Convinced everyone's going to be watching, judging at the school cafeteria, they feel self-conscious and assume others are constantly scrutinizing their every move, even though most people are focused on their own conversations and own meals. Right? The heightened sense of awareness and belief that they are the center of attention illustrates the concept of imaginary audience. Right? Everybody's always watching me. I am the main character center of attention, right? And when you're around other adolescents, everyone has that idea. So everyone thinks they're the center of attention. So nobody can be the center of attention when everybody thinks they are, right? Our second part of egocentrism is personal fable. So this is one that can sometimes get adolescents in trouble, where they believe that their experiences are unique and special. And this leads to feelings of invulnerability and an underestimation of potential risks. So if you've ever read something like a news article or a news item about something tragic happening to someone in their teens, and you think, well, like, that's crazy, that would never happen to me, right? It's because you have this feeling of invulnerability due to this sense of personal fable or personal story, that your story is unique and special and that it can't be ruined or nothing bad can happen because it's your story. And as a result of that, you're more likely to take risks and do things that might potentially put you in danger, right? Because of that feeling of invincibility. So when we're talking about outside of egocentrism and those hallmarks of adolescence, there's also this feeling that you're trying to become your best self and that you have many potential possible selves at this time. And that's the various versions of who you might become in the future, including your ideal self that you hope to achieve and your feared selves that you wish to avoid. And this somewhat motivates your behavior, right? So for example, a high school junior is imagining possible futures. In one version, they see themselves thriving in college, working toward a degree, participating in campus activities, generally studying hard, building relationships, and being successful as a result. On the other hand, you see this other potential self that you fear could happen if you struggle academically, you can't secure a job after high school, and these possibilities also push you to avoid procrastinating and focus on maintaining good grades and doing what you need to do to get to that ideal future while avoiding the one that you fear in your possible selves stories. So this all brings us to, how do adolescents begin to develop their identity and social identity? And this is your sense of who you are based on your membership in social groups. Nationality, religion, or profession, those are just a couple social groups that can help you identify your social identity, right? Other things that can help you identify your social identity: your race, your ethnicity, your gender, your sexual orientation, your religious identity, your occupational identity, and your familial identity. All of these are groups that we do or could potentially belong to, and will help you develop who you are as a person and help you develop that sense of identity that you're looking for as you move through the adolescent stage of development. So when we get to this stage of development, there's these identity statuses theory that tells us that adolescents move through 4 stages as they develop these different parts of their identity and come to know who they are. The first, which is usually the earlier part of development, that 10 to 14, a little more immature, you haven't quite developed your sense of identity yet or even thought about it, is identity diffusion, a state where individuals have not explored or committed to life choices regarding beliefs, goals, or values, often leading to uncertainty about their sense of self, right? This is, like we said, usually earlier on in adolescence, but it can carry through and cause problems if you don't ever think about or explore potential identities for yourself. So you have a high school senior, often feels uncertain about future plans and is not sure what they believe in or want to pursue. They drift between hobbies, social groups, potential career interests without exploring any of them deeply. That's the key here, right? They're not committing to anything, and they're also not searching or exploring anything. This lack of exploration and commitment leaves them feeling confused about their values and goals, resulting in anxiety and indecisiveness about their identity. Generally, earlier in adolescence, and eventually gives way, if you're developing typically and thinking about these things, gives way to foreclosure. Foreclosure, a little bit later in terms of your adolescent development, it's a stage where individuals begin to commit to goals, beliefs, or values without exploring alternatives, often adopting the expectations of parents or society. So you can think about this as middle to later high school age, right? 16, 17, 18. This is, brought upon by your family members, typically your parents. Okay, so pressured by family expectations, another high school senior declares a pre-med major despite having little personal interest in medicine. Their career path is shaped by more external influences than personal exploration, leading them to commit to this field without considering other options. So unlike diffusion, where you're not considering options and you're not exploring, here you have committed to something without exploring alternatives. Right? So you don't know what's out there. You're just doing what you think is expected of you, right? What your parents and your family would like to see happen for you. That's usually, like we said, 16, 17, or 18, before you move into that third stage where you have a little bit more exploration involved yourself. And some people start this in high school, right? But it's harder to do that when you're surrounded by your microsystem and the people who are influencing you and sharing their expectations. Usually, identity moratorium is going to begin when you leave the home and either go to college or you move out and maybe start working for the first time, right? It's a stage where you're actively exploring different life paths, beliefs, values, but have not made a final commitment, often leading to a period of uncertainty and experimentation, right? This is typically, like we said, college age, 19, 20, 21. Right? Where you're really exploring, really trying to find out, what am I interested in? What do I want to do? So during college, a student who initially commits to pre-med realizes it's not fulfilling and takes a gap year to travel and work. Right? That's that uncertainty and experimentation phase. You might experience a little bit of rebellion and things like that to explore these different interests, engage in self-reflection, consider alternative career paths to clarify their value and goals. Right? This is where you are searching for identity and you're exploring other options, right? So it's totally different than some of those earlier stages. So as you work your way through moratorium and you get some more life experience, you're exposed to more diversity and more options out there and less of where you came from. You could end up potentially, hopefully, by the time you push through adulthood and move into that period of emerging adulthood that we talked about earlier, you're getting closer to identity achievement. And this is the stage where individuals have explored various life paths throughout that early 20s, late teens period, right? And they start to make firm decisions about their beliefs, their values, and their goals. And this results in a clear and stable sense of self, right? And you're trying to reach that stable identity, that stable sense of self as you move into true adulthood from adolescence. So returning to that college example, the student decides to switch their major to environmental science. They now have a clear sense of purpose and direction after their exploration period, feeling confident in their choice and committed to their new career path, aligned with their values and interests. They have reached their identity achievement. So I would encourage you just to take a second and think about where you might be, right? Are you in identity diffusion, foreclosure, moratorium, or achievement, right? Most of you are probably in that foreclosure or moratorium stage, right? Either doing what your parents would like you to do and kind of basing your identity off of your family so far. Maybe some of you have started to explore and think about that moratorium and try to figure out where you want to be later in life. Either way, if you're in one of those two spots, you're in a typical place, right? So hopefully that gives you some insight into the adolescent mind and some of the things that you're going through right now and some of the theories that are important for us to know. We'll touch on some more of this in class, and then we will wrap things up for the unit pretty soon. As always, let us know if you got any questions, and we'll see you in class.